Did you ever dream about retiring at 50 or even earlier? And maybe some of you have already done that. But times are changing, and the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney this week told an audience in Dublin that artificial intelligence and robotics are a huge threat to employment security and will mean more of us having a number of jobs and roles throughout our careers and longer working lives as well. He called it the fourth industrial revolution. Well, is it inevitable? If so, how will it affect other aspects of our lives? Are we doing enough to prepare for it? And so on. These are big questions, but we have the people to answer them. Recruitment company boss Tina McKenzie, author and commentator Nicky Cahill, who's worked in the tech industry, Noel Sharkey, Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at Sheffield University, and Kevin Curran, Professor in Cybersecurity at Ulster University. Good morning and welcome to you all. If I could start with you, Noel, just how advanced are developments in artificial intelligence and robotics?
Well, that's difficult to measure. I mean, they're very advanced. They're taking up an awful lot of jobs, like legal jobs, especially, and accounting jobs, those kinds of jobs. And they're being used in a lot of decision-making in the judiciary and in mortgage, in loans, all those kinds of things. But the real problem for employment at the moment is probably robotics, where we're seeing things like there's a new burger bar in San Francisco that can make a robot that can make 400 burgers an hour, and that making them from fresh meat from scratch. There's also a lot of talk about autonomy in vehicles, autonomous transport, but I think that's further away than is depicted usually in the news. So there are concerns, but I think that it's up to the consumer to a large extent. A lot of these figures being pulled out by the Bank of England and various other people are based on predictions about a future, and artificial intelligence is one of those things. I've been in it for 40 years, and one thing it's really famous for is false predictions. We always get the timelines wrong, So I'm not really sure, but there will certainly be quite a big reduction in jobs, and there'll be new jobs created, and it's that balance I'm not sure about. But I would be on the negative side, I would say, and say it is going to create unemployment, but I'm just not sure how much.
So all those parents who are saying to their children, study law because you'll have a great profession and job for life, may not be correct.
Well, at the junior level, that's the case, but a lot of it's very good for assisting lawyers. So instead of having to hunt through all the cases yourself, you can just type in a search queue and get it'll give you all the precedents you need. So there's a lot of stuff for junior assistant lawyers, but at the more senior level, and certainly at the judiciary, there's not much chance of, well, I hope not, there's not much chance of letting artificial intelligence actually make decisions.
Kevin, so the human brain will still have an important job?
It will. Of course, what we're seeing is trends towards what we call this on-demand economy, where a lot of employers are now using the human cloud, as we say, to get jobs done, where precise assignments and discrete projects are bid for by other people online. And of course, these workers could be anywhere in the world. But of course, robotics and artificial intelligence is coming into our lives in so many places as well. And artificial intelligence, really, what when people say what it is, it's really pattern matching. That's what artificial intelligence does. It's able to go through a database of information, really, and extract patterns so much better than humans. And that's where we can apply it. Where it's mostly employed and where it's most effective is in things like face recognition. It actually actually outperforms humans when it comes to face verification, being able to identify someone. It's also become increasingly sophisticated at speech recognition. In some tasks, again, it's able to recognize voices and actually dictate better than human translators. Again, so this is where artificial intelligence comes in, and it really can augment human intelligence. Unfortunately, of course, there's a lot of jobs which are repetitious and are based on patterns, and that's where humans, as Noel says, when it comes to making burgers, being able to, even navigate, vehicles.
Well, we had a driverless bus in Dublin featured in the papers this week, I noticed. But I wanted to come to Tina now, because you're in recruitment, Tina, you're dealing with many, perhaps some of the people whose jobs might be threatened by this new revolution.
Well, I've been in recruitment 25 years and the world of work has changed significantly in that period. I think it's really interesting that this speech has come from the Bank of England. And what I would say is that a lot of institutions feel very threatened by the nature of the world of work changing. Now, we know it's changing. We know we've got a gig economy and we predict that over 500 million people by 2025 will be pitching for jobs online with websites like Upwork and Mechanical Turk. That is happening. No one's going to stop that. It's a bit like saying I'm going to stop people using mobile phones. You've got to go with it. And what I would say is the banks are really challenged by things like the Bitcoin revolution. They're losing their power. The institutions don't know how to keep up. And I go even further and say that our biggest challenge is not the move of artificial intelligence or robotics. Our biggest challenge is that our education system is nowhere near any of this. And we're not preparing kids for the world of work, never mind in 2025. You know, if you look at the skills gap in the United Kingdom and in Northern Ireland and the lack of available skilled labour, we're not preparing our children for the world of work in 2018, never mind 2025.
And Nicky, yeah.
I think that's a really crucial point, Tina, because when you just think that work is entirely the meaning of your life and children are being told you'll become a lawyer, it's a job for life, that isn't true. And if you take your meaning and identity just from your work, then it's going to be quite damaging, especially with this move into AI. And it's really important, I think, to realise that it's happened. It's already here. Jobs are already going. Automation is already a big process. But it's how can we work together? How can we be collaborative? Because AI can't do everything, especially some of the more softer skills and some of the more creative and more complex things. And so how do the two come together to create it? I was interested to read that in the GDPR things, they reckon about 75,000 jobs are going to be created across the world because of the need to analyse and look at all the problems that has thrown up.
But you need skills in order to be able to analyse those kinds of things. Kevin, to what extent at the moment do you find that people are having the skills or have the skills or are learning the skills to deal in robotics and to understand what artificial intelligence can or can't do?
Of course, it's one subject in computer science again, and we're trying to get as many engineers out there as possible. Again, the UK government, of course, are putting money into the STEM subjects of science and technology, engineering and maths, which are crucial for the forthcoming, the global economy, really. I've said it for many years, I feel like the town crier that you should stop sending your kids to piano lessons and enroll them into computer programming classes, really, because computer programming, just being able to
hang on a minute. That is an extraordinary statement, because I don't see why stopping piano lessons should either give you more time to learn artificial intelligence. Indeed, I would have thought that if you were good at fingering on the piano, you might be rather better at dealing with an artificial robot. Noel, let me bring you in at this point. I'm shocked by that statement.
The new thing in engineering now is we talk about STEAM rather than STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and we've added an A now, which is arts. And arts are really crucial, because to move forward we need people who have got innovation, innovators, and we need to find a way of bringing creativity into engineering. But could I just say a little bit about AI, because I monitor all the time, and it's getting close to what we call the top of the hype cycle. So people are over-exaggerating all the time. When you look at the number of companies actually using it, it works out at about 8% of all the major companies, and there's another 60% saying they want to use it, but often it's just a statistical package. And there's a real problem here. One thing is, we heard about face recognition just now being more accurate than humans. It is for white males. It's about 98% accurate for white males. For women, it's a lot less accurate. And as your skin shade gets darker, it's really bad. And the UK police recently have been using it with crowds. And Big Brother, which is an NGO, used freedom of information to get a lot of information on face recognition from the police use. And their average in accuracy was 95%. So it's pretty bad. And also, we're finding a lot of cracks emerging in the decision process. It turns out that it's very, very gender and race biased. So the consumer needs to know about this. And the Foundation for Responsible Robotics, which I co-direct, has just started a big new project with Deloitte of a new certification mark for AI and robotics to show the public what to trust.
I think with all this technological advancement, as we've seen in previous industrial revolutions, the workforce adjusts accordingly and new jobs are automatically created. And where there's issues as those just being described, then systems are modified or not used in the same way, etc. So I think what's interesting isn't just what's going on with technology, it's what's going on with people. So across the United Kingdom, indeed across the world, but if we just focus on our area, across the UK, out of a working population of, I don't know, let's say 36, 40 million, we have at least 10% of those people that are currently working flexibly. The people have changed. People don't want to stand and work 8 to 6 o'clock every day. Maybe what they did 30, 40 years ago, Monday to Friday, work in the same institution, the same place, and then at the age of 60, take their pension and go off. And usually lifespans then were that by the 65, 70 rate, most people were then passing on. You know, the world of work has changed and people are actually very much more demanding. And we see that in recruitment. People will come to us and they will say, these are the hours I want to work because I'm working around the needs of my family, my parents, my children, my hobbies, and especially the generation that's coming through now, they're very particular about what they want and what they don't want. So I think that all of this is also going to be led by the attitudes and the wishes of younger people coming through.
But to what extent can it be led by those wishes?
I think it's really important to think there are so many opportunities. They're not just, you don't just need to do STEM, you don't just need to be into science, because if we look at some of the AI systems, it's absolutely fascinating how humans train the algorithms. So if we look at some of those new digital assistants that we see in the big companies at the moment, they were trained by poets, novelists, playwrights, by people who really have different types of creative skills, so that those digital assistants can have a voice that you want to talk to, can respond in a kind of funny or funky way, and actually learn emotions. And I think it's really important that we tell young people there are so many opportunities out there. Don't be defined by, oh, there's no jobs, because the minute you do that, you go into something where you're not going to enjoy it, and actually start thinking, well, what am I going to do for the first bit of my career? I could maybe have 3 acts to my career and I'll move into different things and do different things.
I would agree with that, and I think there's some scaremongering going on here.
Yeah.
And I also, should I say it? I also think it's a generational thing. I think the older generations, because they see change and they see these different things coming through, they're scared of it. And this kind of, and I also think institutions are threatened by it. And if we look at education today, you know, primary school, secondary, and then going off potentially to university or college, well, actually, training has to change, because younger people will have 10 jobs in their lifetime at least, and they will probably have a change of career as well. They'll have to be upskilled and trained right throughout.
Can I bring in Noel and Kevin again and to ask you both, what kind of ethical challenges do you see thrown up by this revolution? Because it does appear inevitable. You seem all to be agreed on that. The speed is something different, but Noel first.
There are so many ethical challenges, it's difficult to list them all. I mean, I've looked at areas all the way through from using robots for childminding, elder care, all those things. And there's risks to, mainly human rights risks, erosion to our autonomy, to our freedom, and many other things. But I think the thing that's most worrying at this moment in time is this gender bias and race bias, and it's spreading really quickly, and it's a very serious concern. But I'm also very concerned about talk about universal basic income, and that's the thing that everybody keeps saying will be the solution. Some people are saying, oh, we'll all be able to go out down to the beach a lot and drink cocktails and do all those things. But as somebody else said in your programme, for many people, work is the meaning of life. And this idea of flexibility, I heard from your recruitment person here. Well, I've met many people who are suffering from zero contract hours, single parents who show up for work and then get sent home again because they're not needed that day. And we don't want to be moving into more of that in our world.
I think
the idea of having universal basic income. Now, I've been to Oakland as well in California where they're piloting it. And one of the problems is who is setting the level? And if a government set it up and everybody goes, oh, this is great for us, but then another government comes in and says, well, we didn't do so well this year, so it starts to look like welfare. So it's not something very easy to sort out.
Kevin, I wanted to hear from you as well on this, on the ethical challenges.
Yeah, it's becoming very important of late, and our technical people are finally being forced to think about the ethics involved in these systems again, because these systems are designed to reduce human intervention in day-to-day life, and but we have concerns around human rights again, that we do not infringe upon internationally recognized human rights. Again, our well-being, we have to prioritize the metrics of well-being in their design and use and accountability, and also ensure that they operate in a transparent manner, because of course GDPR does force companies now to disclose when a machine is making a decision on someone getting a loan application or whatever else. So we should know when computers are involved in an automated decision.
And also, in terms of, you talked about face recognition, Noel, and the mistakes that can be made. I want to ask a question. Does that mean that perhaps should we be trying to slow down this revolution in some way, because of moving too quickly could have terrible consequences?
Well, it's very difficult because there's such competition. We're competing now with China, which is moving at an incredible pace, the United States. So if we slow down, will they slow down? But at the same time, people talk about, whenever you bring ethical issues up and human rights issues, sometimes the big companies will say, well, you don't want to stifle innovation. And my view is that there's some innovations that are probably worth stifling. Slowing down would be very good, and the only way to do that is with regulation, really. And we haven't put enough work into that. And we really need to slow it down.
I see one nodding and one shaking a head here in the studio.
I think there's a challenge, just to come back to the point made earlier, that if every time we talk about technological advancement or flexibility in the workplace, someone wants to throw up the example of 0 hours or the example of, in this one particular technological system of facial recognition, it doesn't, at this point in time, recognise faces that are darker, then I think the arguments are gone. And we have to look at the whole picture. At the end of the day, across the world today, people work differently. They work differently because they have technology, because they embrace technology, but also there isn't any groups or institutions really in control of how that technological wave is going across the world. So if we look at our children now, how our children and our teenagers are learning on their laptops. If you go to the doctor, the first thing they do is go onto their system, and it's like a Google search when they're looking for what's wrong with you. That is the world we're in, and I think we have to embrace what we have, but also remember that in this little place called Northern Ireland, we have the lowest productivity, we have the highest economic inactivity, and we have real issues in Northern Ireland that we've got to look at about, especially with upskilling our young people.
We have big organisations and big employers employing people on 0 hours contracts, and if you're on a 0 hours contract, this is a very
Most people don't. Actually, if you look at, I know the unions will talk a lot about that, but if you look at the statistics, most agencies don't offer 0 hour contracts today.
I think it's really important when you're thinking about where you actually work that emotions and the humanity of us as human beings isn't removed from work. And sometimes in the tech industry, some people I've worked with, they talk all about logical decisions and removing the emotion. But when you remove the emotion and you continuously go for improvement without emotion, you never arrive anywhere. And when you don't arrive anywhere and you're in continual pursuit of success, you can never go anywhere. You need to begin. You need to arrive, and you need to celebrate that success, because it's from that platform of celebration that you can spring forward for more innovation. And you need to really know what your identity is, because if you don't know what your identity is, then when you fail, your life is over and you just think, oh, I failed, I can't go anywhere. But if you know who you are, you'll see failing as a way of learning, as a way of, oh, what did I learn from this? How can I move forward? And that even is part of the celebration of the project, the good, the bad, the ugly. And you take all that learning and you use it to move forward, but you have to arrive.
I've got a text here from a listener who says, I think your panel need to look at our great further education colleges who deliver programmes on cybersecurity, data analytics and cloud computing. Now that is what you, Noel and Kevin, presumably are both doing at your universities.
Yes. Could I just jump in on one thing, though? Your speaker before last, I don't know who that was, but mentioned about looking at the big picture. Well,
that's Tia McKenzie.
Yes, that's right. Sorry. I agree with a lot of what she says, but I do look at the big picture. And the thing is, you don't want the big picture to hide the little picture as well. Just because the technology is advancing, and I embrace technology, of course. I mean, that's what I work on. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be looking at the small things or the other things that are really going wrong and may prevent the real benefits coming through.
I completely agree with you there. And I think that's where government have a responsibility, departments have a responsibility, educational institutions have a responsibility, but unfortunately, and even the banks, need I say, but unfortunately, if we're in a situation where people aren't really recognising or looking at actually what's going on today in 2018 around the world, and that is not talking about your particular universities, but I'm saying these institutions are not keeping up because I think there's a sense of denial that the world is changing so quickly and so rapidly, and we have a responsibility, yes, for the regulation to ensure that people are safe and are looked after, and it is all our responsibilities in society. But I think a bigger challenge and threat to us today in Northern Ireland is something like Brexit. You know, I think we look at all of this technological advancement and we're worried, and Mark Carney comes out with a statement like that in Dublin. I think he would be much better placed to focus his attentions on what's actually going to happen to the trade in Northern Ireland should we have a hard border.
Now, listen, I have to say Brexit is a whole other discussion. Actually, we were taking bets earlier how long it would be before Brexit would come up in any of our discussions this morning. But no, it is for another time and we will be back at it. But just for now, let us concentrate on what is clearly, you all agree, is a revolution.
It most definitely is a revolution, and I think it's about learning to embrace that. 0-hour contracts are absolutely horrible. There's no getting around that. But maybe you have 2 or 3, or maybe you look at different ways to do your work, and you don't just have one 0-hour contract with one company, because there's a lot of double jobbing and things going on, and it is just a new way of looking at things.
I understand that people might appreciate having 2 or 3 different employers, but the thing about a 0-hours contract is that you never quite know when your employer is going to need you. So if you're on 3 different contracts with 0-hours contract, what do? Do you go and work for X or do you go and work for Y? And how does that fit in with your life?
If you take the 0 hours out of it, because again, there are 3 million workers happily working, and some might say they're not. Let me tell you something about agency work. Most of the unemployed that go on to get a permanent job actually do so by starting off in a temporary job, getting experience, working the hours they can and moving into a permanent job. But with 0-hours contracts, all recruitment agencies ethically will say that is not the way to go. But actually, people that are pitching for jobs and decide, well, I want to do, they have the choice. This is the whole point. On a contract for services, you have the choice to work for A, B or C. Now, some people may say, well, actually, there's so little jobs around in Northern Ireland, people are ending up having to do whatever is instructed to them in terms of minimum wage, whatever. Let me tell you something. There are 50,000 jobs available today in Northern Ireland, mid to high skilled jobs as well. We cannot get the people to fill those jobs. They either educationally they're being failed and they're coming out with level 1 skills, or sometimes not even. But we have not got the people to fill the jobs that we've got. That's unfortunately, and a lot of those jobs are higher paid. So we have to go right back to primary school and look at where we're failing these children and how we're not having the match within the employment market we've got.
And I think there's something important also when you look at the employer. It's how are they keeping the people that, are they creating brilliant work that you want to do? You want to do exciting work that puts you forward, that does something. You don't want to sit there and be bored. And very often,
but Nicky, if you have your chicken dinner today at Sunday lunchtime, Well, who on earth do you think is going to prepare that chicken?
A robot?
No, not a robot, because robots can't do all of that. And in fact, I tell you who's doing most of the work to prepare your chicken on the factory line. It's migrant workers, because we can't get people to do it.
Now, before we get into that one, actually,
not talking about Brexit, though,
it is. My robot thing was a joke, of course, obviously. But there is a text here saying, sorry, robotics is going to do away with 40% of jobs, and even if there are new jobs created, the majority will not have the ability. Now, that ties into something you've been saying, Tina, but I want to bring both Kevin and Noel in on this. Will robotics either do away with or create jobs? Kevin and then Noel, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's an analogy back to the start of the 19th century where 90% of workers worked on the land, and nowadays it's about 2%. And you could say, well, did those workers expect to drive the tractors when it happened? And that's not the case. That what we find is innovations in information technology and other disruptive technologies tends to raise productivity by replacing existing workers rather than creating new products needing more labour to produce them. So, again, there's a lot of jobs that will be available in the next few years which haven't been created now. We know that technology also creates jobs, but the key question is, will we just go through disruption and come out of it the other side the way that the third industrial revolution did and the second and the first? But a lot of the signs are that it won't, because what we have is, with technology, you can achieve things with very small workforces. When WhatsApp was bought for 19 billion, it only had 55 workers.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up very quickly. Noel, will this new industrial revolution do away with jobs or create more ones? And I need a brief answer.
Both.
Very brief indeed. Well, there we have to leave it. Noel, Kevin, Tina and Nicky, thank you very much.
Thank you.